At the risk of quoting Leslie Knope, I want to ask you a question. Are crampers better off in 2025? This has been an eventful year, to say the least. There have been a lot of very obvious big bads, but there have also been some wins and some progress that you maybe didn't hear as much about. So today, for our last episode of 2025, I am going to take a look at the major events of 2025 that are relevant to current and future crampers. Have we made progress? Are we going backwards? Are there actually reasons to hope amid the rage and the grief?
What's happening to your body, we don't know, because we've never really studied the female body. Say it's all in my head, but the research is quite spotty. No, we've never really studied the female body. I go to the doctor to get dismissed. Try losing weight, you're just anxious. That's fine, that's cool, I'm not pissed. Just wait 10 years for a diagnosis. Psychosomatic, you're so dramatic. Hysterical, emotional, hormonal, erratic. Heart disease, chronic fatigue, depression and anxiety. Do you have pain? No, you don't, because we've never really studied the female body.
2025 has definitely been a wild year for this particular cramper. In 2025, I released this podcast, got the HSG imaging test that revealed my evil fallopian tube that was the real cause of all my period pain, had surgery, and have since experienced my first regular pain-free periods. So that's a lot. Yay! This has also been a year in which I spent 10 months without making any income and living off my savings while I worked on this podcast, got surgery and recovered, and then I frantically searched for freelance work. Maybe I wouldn't normally talk about my income on mic, but after discussing all the nuanced details of menstrual blood and period pain, money feels easy to talk about. This year, Cramped also won 2 Signal Awards. We won gold in our health and wellness category, and we also won Listener's Choice, so thank you so much for voting. We also earned a place on Audible's list of the 20 best podcasts of 2025, right next to shows like New Heights with Travis Kelce, IMO with Michelle Obama, and the Telepathy tapes. That was unexpected. Obviously, it feels really good to have your work recognized and validated. But like most of the feelings I've had while working on this show, there are 2 sides to it. Yes, it's amazing to be recognized. And also, it's really frustrating for the show to be so clearly recognized as good and valuable, and yet still be struggling to find time to produce these episodes in between the freelance work that I've had to pick up in order to make money to, live and pay back my surgeon. You may have noticed that we've put out less episodes through the fall and early winter, and that's why. And the world at large has had a pretty 2 sides of the coin approach to dysmenorrhea and endometriosis this year, too. I'm going to do bad news first so that we can end on a hopeful note. So we're going to get a little dark, but stick with it. I promise we have a lot of good news in the second half. So here we go. What are the things that happened in 2025 that left crampers worse off? First off, a lot of funding cuts happened this year, right after Trump took office, which, if you can believe, was not even a year ago. DOGE, remember them? According to some reports, they cut $4 billion from the NIH overall budget. And over 1,700 medical research grants were abruptly ended. And of course, not all of these cuts to funding and grants were specifically for women's health-related conditions, but it's safe to assume that some of these canceled grants were specifically for things like uterine fibroid research, endometriosis research, and other conditions that cause severe menstrual pain. However, some of those cuts were reversed. The Women's Health Initiative, which is a long-term study that has been trying to figure out the causes of major health conditions in postmenopausal women since 1992. It was announced that they were cutting funding for the Women's Health Initiative, and very quickly they reversed course and said that they would continue funding it. Why did they reverse course? Because people made such a big stink about it that Trump gave in, extending that funding. Though it only has been extended to January 2026, and beyond that, it's unclear what will happen to the Women's Health Initiative. So if you get the opportunity to join in on making a big stink about it, do it, because it seems to work. But obviously, us crampers are really hoping that researchers like Dr. Frank Tu and Dr. Kevin Hellman and their teams continue to learn about the mechanisms of primary dysmenorrhea and Like why 25% of us don't respond to NSAIDs. Not to mention all the research that has been going into the causes and potential cures for endometriosis, adenomyosis, fibroids, PCOS. Cutting $4 billion from the NIH isn't helping. The Trump administration also cut $35 million in federal funding for Title X grantees. Stick with me for this. Title X is the only federal grant program that provides, quote, family planning and related preventative health services in the U.S., offering affordable or free contraception, HIV testing, cancer screenings, and pregnancy services to low-income individuals. Title X was established in 1970, and it supports clinics across the country, including Planned Parenthood. Although, to be clear, Title X funds cannot be used for abortions. So what does this have to do with crampers' quality of life? Well, if you don't have health insurance and you have severe menstrual pain, a clinic in your community that is supported by Title X funds might be your only option for accessing care and potentially for finding a treatment like hormonal birth control that could make your symptoms manageable and let you continue living your life. So cutting $35 million in federal funding for Title X? Bad for crampers. And of course, no discussion of this administration's healthcare initiatives would be complete without the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which is so dumb, and I feel so dumb every time I have to say it. Anyway, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was signed in July, and it made, quote-unquote, historic cuts to Medicaid. Medicaid is the one for low-income folks. Medicare is the one for seniors. I have to look it up every time. The effect of this is going to hit in early 2026, when some people will start to lose their Medicaid coverage, including many people with uteruses who experience severe menstrual pain. We've talked a lot on this podcast about how shitty the quality of care for menstrual pain can be, with so many doctors and gynecologists not even having a basic knowledge of conditions that cause severe dysmenorrhea, plus how common gaslighting and dismissal is in medical situations. But even with all that remaining true, we're heading towards a scenario where even getting the opportunity to be dismissed, gaslit, and misdiagnosed by a doctor is going to be a privilege. So yeah, that's bleak. And as always, crampers who are already experiencing other hardships, like a lack of income or medical racism, they are going to be the hardest hit. Let's talk about information suppression. There has been a lot of fuckery happening around information suppression around women's health at all levels. You probably heard coverage of reports from federal agencies that were instructed not to approve grant applications with words like women, gender, or female included in the application. Also terms like equity, Black, Latina, and race. The details on this have been a little sketchy. It seems like memos have gone out, but the fact that it has been so highly covered in the news means that less and less people are going to create grant applications that explicitly study these topics, like, say, healthcare inequities between men and women, racism in medicine, things that really affect crampers. Another example of information suppression is the removal of websites like reproductiverights.gov. Woof. Okay, the government is not our only source of information. Oh, but unfortunately, also in 2025, we've gotten more information about Meta blocking, restricting, and removing content about women's health on Instagram and Facebook. Many independent companies have claimed that Meta, Google, and TikTok are blocking posts about women's health and blocking ads for lifestyle products like pregnancy pillows and menstrual products. All the while, erectile dysfunction ads are literally everywhere. I heard one in the car the other day. Women's health content is more often labeled as sexual or adult or inappropriate, and it is suppressed or removed. Now, honestly, I'm not that mad that some companies are getting blocked, because as we know, the fact that our medical systems are not well set up to take care of our health or our quality of life, a lot of companies step in and try to offer alternative solutions in exchange for money. And some of these solutions are great, and I'm glad that they exist. And some of these solutions are bullshit and borderline predatory. What I'm more concerned about than products being able to be advertised to us is the information that we are trying to share with each other that is crucial to our health being suppressed. I'm sure you're sick of hearing it because I say it almost every episode, But because the systems are not set up for us, our health outcomes are so reliant on our access to information. And this kind of information suppression directly affects our ability to get appropriate medical treatment for our period pain. If we are not able to hear from other crampers about what they are experiencing and what options they were offered, if we are not able to talk to each other openly, online or anywhere else, about the information that we gather, we are going to stay isolated, dismissed, and in pain. And to put a little bow on the bummer section, in 2025, the FDA did not approve any new drugs or devices to treat dysmenorrhea. Okay, I know that's heavy. At this point in my researching for this episode, I stopped and poured myself a drink, because fuck. But there are good things for crampers that happened in 2025. We're going to take a little ad break, go do some rage screaming, and when you come back, I will tell you about some positive developments.
Cause we never really studied the female body.
Okay, we're back. Did you have a good rage scream? I know I did. We're going to talk about some of the good things for crampers that have happened in 2025. Things that will hopefully contribute to our quality of life getting better and us having more and better options to treat our pain. First off, you gotta shout out the ROSE study. ROSE stands for Research Outsmarts Endometriosis. This study has been going on for over 10 years now, and they are literally just looking at menstrual effluent and trying to see if there are ways that they can tell someone might have endometriosis, because, no one else has ever really studied menstrual effluent. I did a whole episode about this back in November, so if you haven't listened to that, go check that out for the full story. But the ROSE study and other organizations, including startups in the Bay Area, are finding ways to diagnose not just endometriosis, but also things like diabetes and STIs using menstrual blood. Ideally, in the next 10 to 15 years, there will be literally like a pregnancy test that you can stick into your menstrual blood to screen for endometriosis. It probably won't be a way to get a definitive diagnosis, but it will definitely be an easy, non-invasive way to screen for endometriosis. This is huge considering currently, even though 10% of people with uteruses are estimated to have endometriosis, the only way that you can be officially diagnosed is with laparoscopic surgery. Also, in the realm of endometriosis, a new endometriosis research center was established called the Second Endometriosis Research Center for Women's Health. They are also studying, and I quote, genetic, metabolic, immune, and inflammatory drivers of endometriosis, including lesion origins and why subtle peritoneal growths evade detection. Meaning they are trying to find out where the lesions come from, why they grow where they grow, and why it's so hard to see them on ultrasounds and MRIs. They're also working on better imaging techniques. And I'm going to dive a little bit into the funding of this. Earlier, we talked so much about all the cutting of funding that's happening on the government level. This maybe will give us hope. This research center's funding of $20 million comes partly from the Endometriosis Foundation of America, also known as EndoFound, and partly from Marilyn Simons, the co-founder of the Simons Foundation, which is the foundation that awarded me the grant to make the initial 10 episodes of this podcast. So there are organizations and individuals picking up the federal government's slack here. There are people like Marilyn Simons and Alexis Joel, Billy Joel's wife, who are speaking out about their own experience with endometriosis, and they're putting their money where their mouths are. And there are really smart people putting that money to good use and looking for answers. And to stay in this arena for a little bit, there is actually lots of scientific and academic support behind investing more in women's health research. It's becoming more and more common knowledge that there are huge gaps in our knowledge of female bodies. Even if the current administration isn't interested in funding studies to improve the outcomes and quality of life for people with uteruses, if we step back and take a longer view, past the next 3 years, support and awareness has been building. In December of 2024, which was almost 2025, the National Academies released a congressionally mandated report that is music to my ears, even if it is dense legalese. It outlines these massive gaps in women's health research and investment and advises the National Institutes of Health to create a new institute focused on women's health and to put over $15 billion in funding into it over the next 5 years, all just to have women's health research catch up to men's health research, or as most of us call it, health research. Obviously, the Trump administration, RFK Jr., and a Republican-led Congress is not listening to that advice right now. But there is hope for a future government that, gives a shit. It doesn't feel like it right now, but the report is there. Okay, this next one is a little bit of a walk to get to, but it's worth it. In southern India, there's a state called Karnataka. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Some of the world's biggest IT firms are headquartered there. Karnataka has become the first Indian state to offer paid menstrual leave to all working women. They get 1 day a month, and they do not need a medical note or certificate to take their day. 2 other Indian states already have some form of menstrual leave for some workers. Like in some states, government workers get a day of menstrual leave a month. One state gives a day a month just to university staff. But Karnataka is the first one to require paid menstrual leave for all employed menstruators. We love to see it. Japan has had laws around menstrual leave since 1947, although it's not always required to be paid leave. In 2023, Spain became the first European country to guarantee paid menstrual leave for all female employees, but it kind of fell flat when the wording of the final legislation required you to have a diagnosed condition like endometriosis and a doctor's note in order to access the leave, which kind of misses the point that painful menstruation is really hard to get treated, diagnosed, and managed. And in Zambia, since 2015, women can take a paid Mother's Day off once a month, even if you're not a mother. That's just what they call it. And if an employer doesn't allow it, you can sue them. I am a little bit obsessed with the idea of menstrual leave, as you can probably tell, and you're going to be hearing more about it in a future episode. Maybe that's not a shock since I opened episode 1 of this podcast with the story of me getting death cramps at work. It tracks. New guidelines came out in 2025 for assessing and treating primary dysmenorrhea. It was in Canada, but many North American gynecologists stay up to date on those guidelines. These new guidelines really spell out that severe menstrual pain is very common, but often undertreated. It recommends that doctors do thorough workups and imaging to investigate potential causes, which seems obvious, but based on my own 22 years without a diagnosis or treatment, lots of doctors still need to hear it, so I'm glad there's updated guidance. So we know we might have to wait a little while to get answers from the research that's currently going on and planned. But while we're waiting, the good news is we do have a wider array of options available to treat our pain in 2025. Things like TENS machines are now more available and accessible than ever. They used to be really expensive physical therapy machines that you would have to rent out from a medical supply company. But now lots of period product companies are offering them right alongside period underwear and cups. There's also devices now that combine heating pads with TENS machines, and those are specifically marketed to people with period pain and endometriosis. There's heating pads in new shapes and sizes, like the diaper-style one that was developed by somebody who actually has adenomyosis. We have CBD and THC bombs, specific strains of cannabis designed for menstrual relief, and CBD suppositories. And I'm sure some of these products suck, but these options were not around 10 years ago, at least as far as I knew. Also, thanks to advocates and doctors and therapists writing books and broadcasting on social media, pelvic floor physical therapy is much more widely known as a potentially helpful treatment for period pain and the conditions that cause it. And gynecologists and doctors are referring more patients with dysmenorrhea and suspected underlying conditions to pelvic floor physical therapists. And while people are at their pelvic floor physical therapists, they're often learning a lot more about their bodies. And yes, while we didn't get any new medications specifically targeting dysmenorrhea, a brand new non-opioid painkiller got approval called Journavx, which I was actually prescribed to help with my post-surgery pain. Theoretically, this could be prescribed to help people with the acute pain of death cramps with much lower risks and side effects than opioid painkillers or things like Valium. Okay, so good things are happening out there. Personally, I feel like that list of good things is slightly outweighing the list of bad things. And of course, the thing that makes me more optimistic than ever, the thing I always come back to, we have access to information. You can go on your computer or your phone, you could read a medical paper, you can post about your period pain and have other people to talk to about it. And we are simply not going to go back to a world where we get dismissed, isolated, and left in pain. And I'm hopeful because of you. Because every single one of you listening to this now has more information than you had before. And I hope in 2026, you tell as many people as possible the information you've learned. I don't even care if you tell them about this podcast. I mean, please do. But mostly just give this information to the people who need it that you come across in your life. Okay, before I say goodbye, I want to let you know that I'm working on a plan for Cramped for 2026. I am planning to 1, release episodes regularly, and 2, reach sustainability so that I can work on this show full time and hopefully bring back the amazing team members that made season 1 such a recognized success. Thank you for your patience around our little unplanned hiatus while I scrambled to find work. I did find work. Everything's fine. We will be back in January, and if you join the Cramped Patreon, even as a free member, you'll be getting 1 or 2 bonus episodes before the regular episodes start back up in January. Plus, you will be helping us get to sustainability that much faster. Just go to patreon.com/cramped. I am also going to start publishing some newsletters through the Patreon. Thank you for being here for this roller coaster of a year. I love you, Crampers, and I wish you happy holidays, low inflammation no matter how much alcohol, sugar, gluten, and dairy you ingest, and a relaxed pelvic floor. See you next year.
What's happening to your body? We don't know because we've never really studied the female body.